It all begins with a young girl named Mi telling Haru that she doesn't want him to go. Haru reassures her that they'll meet again and he'll come to get her when he grows up so they can get married. He also promises to protect her even in death. While Haru is on the bus, it loses control and is hit by a train, causing a fatal accident. When Haru wakes up, he finds himself in another world. In the kingdom of Beltram in the year 991 of the Holy Era, Haru discovers he is in the body of a young boy and wonders if his name is Ryo or Amakawa Haruto. Memories from both his past life and current life start flooding back. Three men walk into the house where Ryo is and one of them asks if he's already awake, saying he thought he'd be dead by now. They had just returned from a transport job where they earned 10 gold coins, which is quite a lot for the work they did. They drop a sack in the corner of the room and treat themselves to a nice meal. While Ryo is hungry, they tell him to take a bath because his smell is ruining their food. Ryo goes out to find some fruits to eat. Amakawa Haruto was a 20-year-old university student who lived in a country called Japan and died in a traffic accident. Ryo is a young boy living in the slums who wants to avenge his mother's death. His grandparents live in a place called Yagumo. While Ryo is changing clothes, 4 women meet him, and one named Vanessa asks if he has seen a girl with light purple hair about his age. He tells them he doesn't know. Celia tells Vanessa to let her ask, because she doesn't think Ryo will answer if they approach him that way. Celia steps up to Ryo, introduces herself, and asks if Ryo has seen the girl with purple hair. He says he hasn't. She asks him if the slum is the next place after where they currently are, and he confirms it, advising her not to go there since it's not a suitable place for someone dressed as nicely as she is. She asks what kind of clothes women in the slums wear, and he says it's the same but just tattered. Vanessa suggests they change clothes and return. Christina suggests they hurry up because changing clothes could waste time, but Vanessa points out they aren't operating as an official group, so they shouldn't cause a disturbance. Celia uses her magic to check for any magical responses nearby, and realizes Ryo has a large amount of magical power and the potential to use magic. Ryo is surprised to see a strange light around him, but doesn't understand what it is. Celia tells Vanessa there are no other magical reactions besides theirs and Ryo's. Celia gives Ryo a small bag of greater silver coins as payment for the information, and they head back to change their clothes. Ryo hides the money in his shirt, and as soon as he gets back to the house, a masked man attacks him. Just as the masked man is about to hit him, a spirit lady appears in front of him and promises to teach him about Odd and how to use his magic power. She instructs him to use the light surrounding his body to boost his physical abilities and make himself stronger. She plants an image in his mind for him to follow, which he uses to fight back against his attacker. The masked man enhances his strength and starts to attack Ryo, but Ryo dodges all of his strikes while landing hits on the masked man in between. He ultimately defeats the masked man and discovers he's the leader of the men who had entered the room earlier. Ryo then hears a woman struggling in a sack in the corner, so he goes to free her. She begs him to take her to the castle, but upon seeing the dead body, she screams and faints. He realizes she's the girl Celia was searching for. On their way to the castle, Christina encounters him carrying the girl on his back and slaps him, calling him a liar. The young girl who was kidnapped is named Flora, and Christina demands to know why he kidnapped her younger sister. Vanessa tells Christina to calm down and hands Flora over to Celia and Roanna to look after her. Vanessa tells Ryo to explain what happened in detail, but before he can, Christina provokes him, causing him to hold her hand painfully, which leads Vanessa to order him to accompany them to the castle. Ryo refuses, insisting that he only rescued her, but Christina insists he goes with them. When Ryo realizes protesting is a waste of time, he agrees to follow them to the castle. Sir Alfred and the knights check out the building where Ryo is staying and restrain the masked man that Ryo knocked out, but before they know it, an unknown man snaps a crystal in his hands, killing the masked man. At the castle, Charles Arbor, the vice captain of the Knights of the Royal Guard, restrains Ryo, trying to extract information about how the second princess was kidnapped. Ryo denies being involved in the kidnapping, even under torture. Flora finally wakes up in her room with Vanessa and Celia by her side. She asks Vanessa for an explanation about everything that's happened, which Vanessa provides. Vanessa tells her they need to determine if Ryo's account is true, and suggests summoning him. She warns that this may be difficult since Ryo isn't just any orphan, and it will require the king's consent. Flora urges her to hurry and make the preparations. Charles is getting frustrated trying to get answers from Ryo, as he keeps giving the same response even after being beaten badly. He's determined to restore their reputation, since Flora's safety was their responsibility before her kidnapping. Vanessa and Celia walk in and are surprised by the scene. Vanessa reminds Charles that the investigation must be conducted with courtesy, and Celia asks for Ryo to be released immediately. Charles initially refuses, claiming Ryo is responsible for the kidnapping, but Vanessa insists Flora says she owes her life to Ryo. Charles lets him go, and Celia uses her healing magic to help him. Ryo wakes up in the royal palace with Celia sitting next to him. She apologizes and introduces herself, explaining that she's studying magic at the Beltram Royal Academy. She tells him he's about to have an audience with the king, who wants to express his gratitude in person. He asks her to teach him the proper manners for the audience since he can't meet the king without knowing the protocols. At the Beltram Royal Academy, Rio's academic skills haven't been evaluated yet, but Celia tells him she hopes he can read and write. Rio explains he never studied writing, and she offers to tutor him. Celia informs him that many of the students are from royal or titled families, but he reassures her, saying he knows his place. She tells him to come to her if he has any issues and welcomes him to the academy. Celia introduces Rio to the class as a transfer student. The other students whisper among themselves, surprised that someone from the slums would join their prestigious royal academy. His enrollment was approved by the king for saving the princess. Rio introduces himself, and one student mocks him, saying at least he speaks well for a servant. After class, Rio meets Celia in her office in the basement to discuss his tutoring. She welcomes him inside, where the room is packed with books, making it hard to move around. Celia is a 12-year-old professor who skipped grades and graduated high school early. She gives him some math questions, which he answers quickly and correctly. He tells her it was just simple multiplication and division, and that it's easier for him when he can write. She mentions that only Princess Christina in his class can do that. When she asks where he learned arithmetic, he replies it was from his mother. She serves him tea, and while they drink, she inquires about his first day at the academy, asking if he has any problems. He says he has none, and asks her to recommend some children's books since he wants to learn letters. Outside, the students are having physical training. The instructor asks Rio to strike him however he likes. Rio takes a stance he learned from his past life, and attacks the instructor using the swordsmanship he learned as Haruno. The other students are amazed by his skill. Afterward, the instructor tells Rio he has the potential to be a knight, but Rio replies he's not interested in joining the knights. As the end-of-term exams approach, Rio keeps studying. Celia tells him not to worry about his grades since he just joined the school, but he insists he'll give it everything he has. During the exams, while some students struggle, Rio answers the questions effortlessly. Once the exams are over, Rio goes back to his room and has a flashback of Mi. Ayase Miharu was Amakawa Haruto's childhood friend, but after Haruto's parents divorced, they lost touch until he saw her again in high school, and afterwards, she never returned, almost as if she had vanished from his life. Rio reminds himself that Haruto is dead, pushing himself to stay strong and resilient. When the exam results come out, the entire school is shocked to see Rio ranking first alongside Christina, while Roanna ranks third. Alphonse confronts Rio, accusing him of cheating to get that top spot. Rio tells Alphonse that he just studied like everyone else. Roanna advises Alphonse to drop it, saying jealousy doesn't suit a gentleman. Christina adds that false accusations only tarnish the academy's reputation. Celia walks in, telling them that Rio's achievement comes from his hard work, but Alphonse still refuses to accept it. At Celia's office, she congratulates him on coming first in the exams, and expresses some worry that the other students might start looking for ways to criticize him. He replies that he's used to it. He asks if something similar happened to her during her time, given her excellence, and she admits it did, but that she ignored it. He assures her he'll be fine, but she counters that her situation is different because she had friends. He reminds her that he has her, so he'll be okay. He asks her to give him advice as his teacher and friend whenever he's in trouble, and she agrees, saying she'll take him under her wing whenever he's about to cry from the bullying. The instructor of the physical training class announces that there will be another exhibition tournament among the kingdom's knights this year, and representatives for the primary division have been selected from their class. The chosen names are Alphonse Rodin, Stuart Huguenot, and Rio. Alphonse objects to Rio being picked, saying someone of Rio's status shouldn't be allowed in a knightly tournament. He tells the instructor that Rio can't use magic, but the instructor insists the decision has been made. In her office, Celia tells Rio that if he performs well in the tournament, he might get noticed by the knights even before graduating. Rio responds that he doesn't want to become a knight. He's currently in his 6th year, having spent 5 years at the academy, and Celia asks what his plans are after graduation. He tells her he wants to go on a journey. When she asks if he'll at least stay in the country, he says living there is hard for him. She suggests he work with her, but he declines, saying she will soon get married, and it wouldn't be good to have an unknown commoner in her research lab. She insists she has no plans to marry for a long time. He mentions he's planning to go to his parents' homeland, the Yagumo region, and she points out that it's on the edge of the wilderness. The tournament between the glorious knights and the students of the Royal Academy kicks off with Alfred Emerly as the referee for the day. Rio faces Charles Arbor in the first match, and after some light banter, Alfred tells them to get ready. He notices Rio's unusual stance, and as the fight begins, Rio remains calm while managing Charles's blows. Charles was demoted 5 years ago for what he did to Rio, and fueled by that frustration, he attacks Rio intensely. To everyone's surprise, Rio wins the fight. The other knights of the Royal Guard win their matches as well, except for Charles. The next day, some students start confessing their love to Rio, handing him a love letter at the corner of the school. Celia witnesses this and feels a bit jealous. Celia checks out the students' plans after graduation, and when she sees Rio's, she finds it empty. Celia teaches them about magic, explaining that magic uses formulas designed to control magical power by channeling energy through them. She explains that this craft interferes with worldly matters. The students are to use lightning to deepen their understanding of magical control. control. Alphonse raises his hand and tells Celia that anyone in the room should be able to use low-level magic except for one person, Rio. He tries to make fun of Rio, and Celia asks him and Stuart to demonstrate lightning for her. They produce their weak lightning, and she tells them they haven't mastered it at their level. She explains that casting a covenant formula depends on a person's affinity, which isn't the same as being skilled in magical control. She mentions that even without magic and with certain artifacts, some can use multiple magical techniques at once. She demonstrates it for them, and they are all amazed. Rio can't cast magical covenant formulas like the others can, but by mimicking the flow of magical power, he can reproduce magical techniques. After class, Stuart confronts Rio, accusing him of seducing the female students lately. Rio doesn't understand, and Stuart insists that his earlier win in the tournament was a fluke. Celia warns Stuart, reminding him that he's nobility and shouldn't criticize without solid evidence. Flora watches the altercation, and Stuart tells Rio that the House of Duke Huguenot won't stay silent if he tries anything foolish during the outdoor practicum. Flora is worried that she hasn't been able to repay Rio since he has always handled things himself. At the outdoor practicum location, the students will be tested on their military exercise knowledge from the academy. Flora expresses her nerves, and Roanna tells her not to worry, as it's a team competition with most of the dangerous monsters removed. The students are expected to take the shortest route through the mountain forest to reach the goal. The operation lasts until sunset, and a good performance will significantly impact their grades. Alphonse gives instructions to his teammates, aiming to achieve the goal by afternoon. Roanna objects, saying it would be impossible since the area is wooded and mountainous, requiring twice the time to travel. He reassures her, saying he has a special course in mind. He mentions that a soldier from his home region revealed the area's geography and shortcuts to him. She expresses discomfort with this, feeling like it's cheating. Stuart tells Rio to carry everyone's luggage and follow them, but when Rio carries it, Flora offers to help with some of the load, which he declines, thanking her for her concern. As they head into the forest, they encounter goblins, and Alphonse, their unit commander, instructs the three in the front to use artifacts to enhance their physical abilities. They boost their physical powers and take down the goblins. The hooded man from earlier, who broke the stone to kill someone, watches them in the forest and decides to test Rio a bit to see what his true abilities are. As the students exit the forest, they unexpectedly face a cliff, and Christina asks Alphonse what they should do, since the path ends there. The group suddenly comes under attack from orcs, and Alphonse orders the front line to raise their shields and block the spears. One of the spears strikes Stuart's leg, sending him running and causing him to push Flora off the cliff. Rio jumps in to save Flora, but instead, he falls. The students defeat the orcs, and despite the fall, Rio lands safely and uninjured. He wonders whether it was magic or magical techniques, since he can't explain the power he felt. Stuart blames Rio for causing him to push Princess Flora down the cliff, but Flora insists that's not what happened, and that Rio was just trying to save her. Rio watches the situation from the bushes while Stuart continues to accuse him of the accident. Christina reminds them that this isn't the time to look for someone to blame. Rio had planned to graduate from the academy, but seeing what just happened made him walk away. As the students carry on with their mission, Flora calls them back, asking if they really plan to abandon Rio. Alphonse claims Rio deserved the fall, but Flora decides to help him, even if it means going alone. Suddenly, a huge monster emerges from the forest, easily deflecting all their attacks and leaving the students helpless. All of them, except Flora, follow Alphonse's orders to retreat. Flora goes to tend to their injured classmate. The monster charges at Flora, and Rio rushes in to save her, severing the monster's hand first to give her a chance to escape. He then draws the creature's attention to himself, blocking its attacks, and ultimately decapitating it when the opportunity arises. The other students return for Flora, but before they realize it, Rio has already slipped away. The hooded man who orchestrated this fight enjoys the spectacle more than he expected, and seeing Rio's black hair, he wonders if Rio is a descendant of people from the Yagumo region. He thinks this might explain why Rio can use spirit arts. Celia complains about researching monsters for the headmaster, and just as she's about to report to his office, she hears that Rio has gone missing. The headmaster, Garcia, is informed that the Duke Arbor's house will be emboldened if the standing of the House of Huguenot is threatened, which would harm the kingdom. The headmaster feels he has no choice but to blame Rio and leaves the rest up to Duke Huguenot. Celia eavesdrops on the entire conversation and wonders what could have happened to Rio. Later that night, Rio visits her in her office, and she runs to hug him. She tells him he hasn't done anything wrong and that the accusations are false. He explains that those in power are the ones who decide what's right and wrong, and that no one would acknowledge the truth even if he appealed with it. He thanks her for everything and says goodbye, telling her he's headed to the Yagumo region and promises to write her letters using the alias Haruto. Duke Huguenot sends an assassin named Latifa after Rio and instructs her to find him and kill him at any cost. Rio makes his way to Yagumo, and 3 days after leaving Beltrant, he sends sends a letter to Celia, letting her know that he has safely arrived at a neighboring kingdom. He reaches Amande, a market town in the kingdom of Galark. He checks the wanted posters in Amande for his face, but they haven't reached there yet. Because he's wanted in Beltrant, it's been tough for him to get the supplies he needs for his journey. He decides to buy what he needs in Amande while Latifa continues to follow him around town. Rio goes to get soup-style pasta, a dish invented by the governor of Amande, Lady Lissalot, made from wheat called noodles. It's the first time he's seen pasta in this world and heard the word noodles, so he eagerly dives into the meal. He wonders if it's the same Lissalot from Haruno's world, but he doesn't have time to check that out now since he's aiming to visit his parents' homeland to fulfill a promise he made to his mother. The store owner from earlier points him to the Rika Merchant Guild where he can get Menju, another creation of Lady Lissalot. When he enters the Rika Merchant Guild, a lady named Lottie tells him he can't bring weapons inside and offers to keep his sword for him while she helps him for the day. She shows him around to buy groceries, including 15 kilos of dried pasta and 10 kilos of barley. While he waits for his food to be packed, she serves him tea, and they chat about it. Rio writes a letter to Celia informing her he's finally managed to get food and that he won't be able to send any more letters once he leaves the Strahl region. Just as he's about to head out, Lottie wishes him to take care, and after he leaves, a lady named Cosette, who helped him pack, tells Lottie that Rio seems a bit mysterious. As Rio continues his journey, he comes across Latifa, a young girl lying on the floor. When he stops to check on her, she suddenly attacks him. She manages to poison him during the struggle, and when she shows her face, he realizes she's a beast person. Rio heals himself and neutralizes the poison, but when she sees that he's not affected, she keeps attacking. They dodge each other's moves, and Rio notices her speed. Latifa creates some distance and enhances her physical abilities with magic. Concerned about how fast she'll be after that, Rio charges at her, but she blocks all his attacks. Latifa wonders how Rio is so fast, even as a human, and continues her assault. Noticing she's focused on using her knife, Rio drops his swords and takes advantage of her openings to counterattack and defeat her. After he wins, her expression changes, and she starts crying, saying she doesn't want to die. With no other choice, Rio uses his magic to put her to sleep. After tying her down, he notices a collar of submission around her neck and uses the dispel spell he read about in a book to take it off. Latifa is originally known as Endo Suzune. She was captured and brainwashed by Stuart. After she wakes up, Rio warns her not to get violent like she did before if she wants to stay alive. She still sees Rio as a monster and becomes submissive to him. Rio asks if she came from Beltrant, showing her the collars, and she's surprised to find hers is off. He asks if that was why she obeyed orders and tells her she won't be in pain anymore. When he inquires who gave her the orders, she admits she doesn't know her master's name since she was never told. He asks about her house, but she only knows the name of her esteemed older brother. Latifa reveals her brother's name is Stuart. Rio asks if he's a beast person like her, and she replies that he's human. He deduces that Duke Huguenot must be behind everything, trying to make Stuart disappear out of fear the truth could come out. Rio then asks if others are after him, but she says she doesn't know. Finally, he questions whether she still plans to kill him, and she assures him she won't. He frees her, telling her to do as she pleases, meaning she can run now that the collar controlling her is gone. He reflects on the fact that beast people are enslaved in the Strahl region, where it's not safe for her. He suggests she head east, away from the kingdom, into the wilderness where she can meet other beast people and demi-humans living together. He grabs his bag to continue his journey but warns her not to expect any mercy the next time she attacks him. Latifa follows Rio closely, and he asks if she has any business with him. She expresses her desire to follow him, and he clarifies he didn't free her because he wanted to save her. Rather, not killing her was just more effective for him. He reminds her that he's human like those who enslaved her, asking if she isn't scared. She says she isn't, and apologizes for trying to kill him. He tells her he can't trust her, and she offers to let him put the collar back on her, admitting she hates being alone and is scared of it. He encourages her to get rid of the collar and do what she wants. When he asks her name, she introduces herself as Latifa. They continue their journey, and after crossing the border, Rio tells her to set up camp. Celia receives a letter from Rio using the alias Haruto, and she reads it with joy, hoping he's safe on his journey. For dinner, Rio makes pasta and tells Latifa to eat as much as she wants. Latifa calls the pasta spaghetti, which sparks some thoughts for Rio. While they're sleeping, Latifa cries in her sleep, longing to go home to Tokyo, but Rio calms her, assuring her she's safe. When he hears her mention Tokyo, he becomes more convinced that she might be reincarnated. When she wakes up, she sees Rio's black hair and suspects he's the guy from the bus. They continue their journey, and on the way, Rio notices a big tree that Latifa can't see, wondering if it's blocked from magic users. They walk into the forest, and she mentions she can smell something faint and different from animals. They decide to set up a tent there, and when Rio checks on Latifa inside the tent, he comes out to see a large, shiny fox vanish. Rio steps out of the hut and sees a big fox shining in front of him. He wonders if it's a demi-human, and suddenly, he's attacked. With his vision gone, He uses a spirit art to sense the odd in the area, locating one of his attackers before striking back at Uzuma. Hearing their voice, he asks if they are demi-humans and says he'd like to talk. Uzuma tells the cat-eared girl named Sarah that humans are dishonorable. Sarah insists they need to know Ryo's intentions and be ready for the worst. She tells the elf girls, Orphea and Alma, to check out the hut while she approaches him, asking him not to call them demi-humans. He apologizes and introduces himself as Ryo. Orphea and Alma inform Sarah that a child of the beast people is in the hut, put to sleep by spirit arts. Without waiting for orders, Uzuma attacks Ryo, accusing him of being a murderer who has kidnapped one of her kind. Ryo heals himself and defends against Uzuma's attacks, while Sarah says he'll need to be restrained once they find their kin with him. Ryo claims it's a misunderstanding and hopes they'll take her into protection, but Sarah restrains him as Uzuma knocks him out. Ryo sees the girl who first helped him with his magic and asks how she knows him. She calls him Haruno and says she just knows him. He asks why, and she says it's because they are connected. She adds that it's still too early, but that she only belongs to him. When he asks what she means, she simply says their time is up. He wakes up calling for me, and Orphea wonders who that is. Latifa rushes into the room where Ryo was chained up, hugging him and saying she doesn't want him to leave. An elderly cat-eared woman enters with Uzuma and Sarah, apologizing to Ryo and asking him to tell her about Latifa. The four girls kneel, offering their apologies to him. The woman tells Ryo that the girls will take full responsibility for their careless actions. She instructs Orphea to free Ryo from his shackles. She tells him the elders will gather the next morning to give him a formal apology and apologize for the small room they provided. Ryo thanks her and accepts her kind offer. The next morning, Ryo walks around and notices a big tree, asking the female elder what it is. She tells him it's the World Tree, home to the Great Dryas, a spirit of mighty trees. He explains that heading for the tree has led him this far. She mentions a high-level illusion magic barrier around the tree that only those knowledgeable in spirit arts can see through. He tells her he's self-taught in spirit arts. They arrive at the Council of Elders, and the meeting begins. One of the three elders who bring together the people of the spirits, named Sildora, leads the meeting. He introduces the cat-eared elder as Ursula and the dwarf beast as Dominic. They apologize for the trouble their kin caused Ryo and thank him for rescuing one of their kind from captivity. He also apologizes for thoughtlessly stepping into their territory. They consider giving him a reward to show their gratitude but struggle to decide since there are three of them. He asks if they would take care of Latifa, and they tell him that's something they should be asking him instead. They ask about his desires, and he inquires whether he could live in the village, given that Latifa has become quite attached to him. The elders agree, and he asks if he could be taught the spirit arts and any useful knowledge for daily life while staying in the village. At their meeting, the spirit of the World Tree, Lady Dryas, appears. She approaches Ryo and senses a weak spirit within him. She asks if he knows what it is, mentioning it might be a spirit he made a covenant with, but he tells her he doesn't remember anything like that. Lady Dryas finds it strange because making a covenant with a spirit usually leads to things like an inability to use magic. She asks if she can look into it, and he allows her to. While examining him, she discovers that he has an incredible amount of Odi within him and wonders if he's human. She reveals there's a person-shaped spirit sleeping inside him, which is very rare. Spirits that take human form like Dryas are of the second highest class or higher. The highest class spirits, known as the Six Great Spirits, disappeared during the Divine Demon War thousands of years ago. Dryas says that the spirit in Ryo could be one of those high-class spirits. Ryo asks if this will cause any issues, and Dryas explains it could be important for the village's children. Sildora tells him they need to reconsider how they treat him, while Ursula mentions they should discuss whether to treat him like a saint, which would mean he gets extra special treatment in their village. Ryo is welcomed to his new house in the village, which has an open-air bath, a kitchen, a beautiful view, and more. They have Ariza grains from the Yagumo region for breakfast. Sarah, Orphea, and Alma are told to live with Ryo to look after him and Latifa. He asks Ursula if it would cause problems for them to live with a human like him, but Ursula says that's the main reason they should be with him. Rice, along with a recruit from the Celestial Lion Brigade, flies down to a cave for his next test, which will grant him permission to officially join the brigade. Reese enters the cave and retrieves an egg, as the Celestial Lion Brigade is considering options to boost its military strength after griffins. He hands the egg to the recruit and goes to manage the griffin as they head back, but on their way, a group of wyverns chases after them. 1 year after Ryo and Latifa arrived in the village, they had done so much for the villagers that they welcomed Ryo as their sworn friend, and Latifa as a resident of the village during the Grand Spirit Festival, marked by a blessing kiss from Lady Dryas. At the end of the ceremony, Dominic announced the start of the feast. During the feast, Ryo wondered why Latifa, Orphina, and Alma were crowding around him. Orphina and Alma expressed their concerns about getting closer to him now that he had become their sworn friend. He told them he wasn't great at being social, but would be happy to become better friends with them. They all felt happy after hearing this, and the girls went to fetch more drinks to celebrate their friendship. Latifa had already become an integral part of the village, and Ryo told Ursula that he would be leaving soon. She remarked that Latifa would miss him. Reese and his recruit took a break halfway through their journey for the night, planning to head to Strahl early the next morning. Reese decided to investigate the area a bit and instructed the recruit to look after the griffin. He handed him a red pill-like artifact, saying it was for protection in case the worst happened. Reese explained that swallowing the pill would reveal his location. The recruit swallowed the pill, and Reese advised him to take the griffin and escape if anything went wrong. He reminded him to take good care of the egg before taking off. Rice flew up into the sky, waiting for the egg's owner to arrive and used the recruit as bait, hoping he played his part well. Rio and Latifa took a walk in the woods, and Latifa voiced her concern about him not saying much during their stroll. She suggested returning to the plaza since there was still plenty of food and drink left, but he paused her and asked if she enjoyed living there. She confirmed she did, and then he shared the news that he would be leaving the village soon. Latifa felt sad, and he told her he was originally heading east. She offered to go with him, but he disagreed, explaining he was going somewhere he had never been and didn't know the dangers. She didn't wait for an explanation and left instead. The villagers noticed a disturbance inside the barrier, and Sarah volunteered to check it out with the warriors. Reese returned to the cave and took more eggs after luring all the monsters to chase one egg. On their way, Orfina sensed two suspicious reactions at the spring, one human and one griffin. Sarah warned them to be careful since they weren't the ones to start a fight. They landed and confronted the human, telling him to come with them, but instead, the recruit did exactly as Reese instructed. He jumped on the griffin and headed toward the village. Sarah ordered them to target the griffin, but it dodged all her attacks as well as those of the wyverns chasing the egg. Sarah directed Orfina and Alma to deal with the black wyverns while the others took on the white ones. Rice declared the recruit's role was over and smashed a pill in his hands after stealing all the eggs in the cave, causing the recruit to start bleeding internally and fall dead. Alma lent her bond spirit to Sarah to use with her Ifritah to take care of the black wyvern. Latifa still can't believe what Rio told her about leaving the village. Suddenly, the egg the recruit was holding falls to the ground in front of her and breaks. She wonders what's going on, and immediately, the black wyvern lands in front of her. After seeing its broken egg, it screams and goes on a rampage. Rio returns to the village, confused about what's happening, and sees the villagers being evacuated. Dominic tells him the festival is cancelled because a flight of wyverns is approaching. Rio hears Latifa's voice and runs after her. The black wyvern attacks Latifa, but Alma comes to her rescue, blocking the fire meant for her. Alma summons her Ifritah, alongside Sarah's bond, to attack the wyvern but ends up getting beaten by it. Latifa tries to buy time for the villagers to escape but gets stuck, and this time, Rio comes to her rescue. She apologizes for running away, and he tells her they'll talk about it later. He reassures her that everything's fine now, and that she can stand down. Rio charges at the wyvern, deflects its attacks, and defeats it easily with his bare hands, realizing that the inside of the wyvern's mouth is its weak spot. The remaining wyverns retreat after the leader is defeated, and everything is handled without any casualties. Wyverns are naturally timid and won't challenge those they know they can't beat. The next morning, Latifa apologizes for the previous day, and he tells her it's his fault for not explaining better. She says she knows he'll leave one day, but she's scared because she feels she's only caused him trouble, thinking that might be why he leaves. He reassures her that she's not a hindrance and calls her his little sister. He mentions he's heading east to the Yagumo region, as it's the land his late parents came from. She says it's the first time he's shared something personal with her, then tells him she once died and used to be human. She explains she was in a place called Japan before, and he believes her. Surprised by his belief, she learns he feels the same way, and that's the main reason he wants to visit Yagumo at least once. Rio takes his leave, and the elders honor him by seeing him off. The dwarfs, through Dominic, gift him a farewell sword made of mithril that can absorb his spirit arts and cloak itself in them. He also receives armor made from the hide of the black wyvern he defeated. The elves, through Ursula, hand him a bag of secret medicines and wondrous elixirs, while the beast people gift him food and drinks. Sildora gives him a space-time cache as proof of his sworn friendship and to make his travels easier. He puts on the space-time cache and stores all his baggage in it, promising to come running if the village faces any danger. He thanks them for everything and takes his leave. Celia wonders if Rio is okay since it's been a while since she received a letter from him. 2 weeks after Rio arrived in the Yagumo region, he still hadn't found any clues about his mother and father, but he noticed that everyone there had black hair. He introduced himself as a traveler looking for someone and asked to meet the village head. A lady named Ruri stood up and said her grandma was the head of the village. She volunteered to show him the way to her grandma. Ruri and Sayo were working in the fields together, and Ruri called Sayo to follow her. Ruri led Rio to her grandma's house and mentioned that she had a visitor. Rio introduced himself to Ruri's grandma and told her he came to ask her something. He explained that he had traveled through many lands, and she introduced herself as Yuba. She asked what he needed, and he said he was looking for someone because he heard she knew most people in the area. He mentioned that his parents lived in the Yagumo region over 15 years ago. She asked for their names, and he replied that they were Zen and Ayame. Yuba was surprised to hear the names and immediately sent Ruri and Sayo back to work. She decided to share more details with him. He told her his father died before he knew him, and his mother passed away when he was 5. Returning to Yagumo was a promise he made with his mother. Throughout his travels, he often thought about making graves for his parents where they lived, because it was the least he could do. Yuba told him she knew both of his parents, and he inquired how. She revealed that she was Zen's mother, making her his grandmother. She explained that they already had graves and took him to see them. He paid his respects, and Yuba told him they had to leave the country secretly for certain reasons, and there was no chance of them coming home. Those who knew the truth made graves for them. He asked about the reasons, but she said she couldn't tell him yet. She would talk about it when the time was right. She asked if he'd stay in the village until then, and he wondered if that would be possible. She assured him it was since he was her grandson. She mentioned that all her relatives had died, leaving only her and Ruri. Ruri, Zen's older brother's daughter, was 15, a year older than Rio. She offered to keep his lineage hidden from others for a while. The next morning, Rio woke up early and decided to help out in the village and make breakfast. They didn't have much water for cooking, and Ruri told Rio to use the water in a specific container so that later, when Seo and Shin arrived, the three of them could use spirit arts to refill it. Instead of using spirit magic, Rio made hot water directly and even offered to teach Ruri the trick behind it. Shin was Seo's older brother and the son of a longtime friend of Yuba. Yuba asked Shin to take Rio to Dola's place because she was considering having Rio become a hunter. Shin takes Rio to meet Dola, and they go hunting together. During the hunt, Rio's impressive skills help him catch a Lenu bird, which surprises Shin. While Shin continues to try to catch something, he ends up missing every shot. Eventually, the hunters return to the village with more meat than usual, while Shin hasn't managed to catch a single thing. After getting dirty from the hunt, Rio creates a hot water bath using spirit magic. On his way out, he runs into Ruri and Sayo, who are surprised to see the new bath. Rio also helps with farm work, collecting a lot of produce for storage. Yuba informs him that the tax examiner will be coming soon and asks him for a favor, given his skills. She explains that after the annual tribute and their rations, the leftover rice is sold in the royal capital, and she needs him to guard the transport team. Shin seems to be in a fight with people from another village, and other villagers rush in to help. Gon, from a different village, meets with Shin's village leader and runs into Ruri and Sayo coming out of the bath, where he starts to eye them, which angers Shin. Ruri stops Shin from hitting Gon, fearing it would lead to more trouble since Gon is the son of the other village's leader. Ruri asks Gon what he wants, and he tells her he's on his way to sell trade goods in the royal capital, but his cart broke down, so he plans to stay with them. She offers him another hut to stay in. Gon responds by saying not to be too cold, claiming he might be her husband one day since she's just being kept for an heir. Hearing this makes Shin furious, and he attacks Gon. Gon catches him by the neck to stop the attack, but Yuba comes in to defuse the situation. After hearing everything, she tells Gon they'll lend him the guest hut at the edge of the village for the night, and he isn't allowed to leave it. On the way, Gon sees Rio and tries to kick him, but ends up falling instead. Yuba tells everyone they can return to their huts, but should stay alert. That night, Seo stays over with them, and Rio gives both girls a protective amulet to place by their beds. The amulet looks just like the red pill Reese used. The issue with the cart was planned by Gon, and he tells his friends they can spend the next day fixing it at their own pace. The next day, Rio meets with Saga Hayate, the tax examiner who visits all the villages. Later that evening, Rio practices swordsmanship while Ruri and Sayo watch, hiding behind one of the huts. He tells them it's not fun for them to watch like that. Later at night, Gon sneaks into Ruri's room and covers her mouth to silence her. He also threatens Seo to keep her quiet. Rio walks in and sees Gon lying on Ruri. His expression changes, and he asks Gon what he's doing. Gon tries to attack Rio, but Rio defeats him quickly. This is the second time Rio has felt like he could kill someone. The next morning, he apologizes for the trouble he caused, but Yuba tells him he has nothing to apologize for and thanks him for protecting Ruri and Seo. The village also decides that Gon and the others should be punished in their village. Gon and his men are being taken to the royal capital's prison camp, thanks to Lord Hayate, while the village's transport team can safely set out. Yuba asks Hayate for a favor and gives him a letter to deliver to his father, Lord Gauki, stressing its importance and requesting he hand it to him personally. Hayate heads to the next village for their tax evaluation and then returns to the royal capital. Rio and the transport team, led by Dola, travel with Hayate and part ways, arriving at the royal capital of the Karasuki Kingdom several days later. Rio and the transport team led by Dola are taken to their accommodations and advised to take someone familiar with the capital. Shin and Rio, alongside Dola, go to lock up Gon in the cell. Dola tries to lift Shin's spirits while they wait for their 3 large servings of kamutan. The meal is so sweet that Shin makes sure his sister gets to try it before they leave the capital. After eating, Shin thanks Rio for what he did for Sayo. Rio and Sayo go shopping and later enjoy some kamutan before parting ways. He mentions that Shin asked him to take her there if possible. On their way, Rio buys her a beautiful hairpin as a souvenir from the capital. And as they leave, the store seller advises Sayo to ensure she wins Rio over, as there will be a lot of competition for him. A thug tries to kidnap Lady Komomo on the street, but Rio rushes in to rescue her. He informs Aoi, the swordswoman in charge of Komomo, that she seems to be unconscious but believes her life is not in danger. He hands Komomo back to her and quickly leaves with Sayo to avoid further trouble. Reports of the attempted kidnapping reach Lord Guki, and Hayate delivers Yuba's letter to him. Upon reading the letter, Guki immediately asks Hayate if he has met someone named Rio. Guki, his wife, and Hayate Tete then head to the village residence to meet with Ryo. They enter a room to discuss matters, and Guki introduces himself and his wife, Kyoko, to Ryo. He explains that they were once attendants to his mother, known as Lady Karasuki Ayame. Ryo is taken aback to hear his mother's name, and Guki reveals that his mother was from the royal family of the kingdom of Karasuki. Guki shares his connection with Ryo's father, Zen. Over 20 years ago, when the Karasuki kingdom was at war with the neighboring Rokuren kingdom, Zen volunteered as a soldier. Zen had a natural talent for both spiritual and martial arts, and the king soon awarded him the rank of warrior noble. During that time, Zen had a duel with Guki, impressing him with his skills, which led Guki to strongly recommend that Zen protect royal family members. Zen guarded Lady Ayame, who took a liking to him. At that time, a truce was negotiated with Rokuren, and during the ceremony celebrating this truce, the prince who came as an ambassador became infatuated with Lady Ayame and attempted to have his attendants abduct her, but Zen thwarted their plan. The prince, angry about his attendant's death, demanded that Zen be executed before finalizing the truce. He also insisted on a political marriage to Lady Ayame for the truce to go through. The thought of it made Guki furious, which is why Lady Ayame ran away with Zen. The king had secretly arranged their escape, and no one heard from them until Guki received a letter from Yuba. Gauki asks Ryo to join him at the castle the next day, hoping that Ryo can meet the king and queen. The next day, Ryo arrives at the castle and meets King Homura and Queen Shizuku. He introduces himself, and they tell him to relax since he's meeting with his grandparents. They offer him a seat, and Queen Shizuku asks him to share about Ayame and Zen. Ryo cuts to the chase and reveals that both of his parents have died. King Homura wants to know how they died and how they live. Ryo explains that his father passed away before he was born, and that his mother was always kind and smiling until she died when he was 5. When King Homura asks how she died, Ryo recounts that a man named Lucius killed her right in front of him. Lucius had worked with Ryo's father as an adventurer and helped them in various ways after his father's death. Shizuku inquires about how he's been living since then, and Ryo tells her he woke up in the slums, living as an orphan until he was 7, when he rescued someone important to the kingdom and was allowed to go to a kingdom-run school. He attended until he was 12 before he set out for the land his mother had promised to show him. Ryo adds that he can never forgive the man who killed his mother. Homura tells him that pursuing revenge will only lead to hell, but Ryo insists he'll still go through with it, even if it means getting his hands dirty. Homura says he won't stop him, but encourages him to spar with Guki, the strongest warrior of the Karasuki kingdom, since he'll need strength to face Lucius. Guki and Kyoko bring Ryo home and meet Komomo. Aoi informs them that the person who saved Komomo is the man with them. Guki and Ryo spar, and Guki notes that Ryo's potential is intimidating, especially since he hasn't yet reached his physical prime or gained much experience. Ryo blocks all of Guki's attacks, combining sword techniques with unarmed styles. Guki finds the fight thrilling and gathers magic around his sword, using his hidden skill, First Blade Air Slash, to attack. Ryo blocks the strike and counterattacks, winning the duel. Afterward, Homura asks Ryo if there's anything he wants. Ryo shares that he has a cousin living in the village where he's been staying and would like to inform her about his lineage. Homura says he'll trust his decision. Ruri discovers that Ryo is her cousin and the prince of the kingdom. Yuba tells her that although it isn't officially recognized yet, Ryo belongs to the royal family, and Ruri laughs, wondering if she's being teased. Yuba shares the story of Ryo's father, and she believes him. Ryo asks Ruri not to change how she relates to him and hopes their relationship continues. He tells both of them that he's considering leaving the village around this time next year. Yuba asks if he'll return to the land he grew up in, and he says he would, but he wants to stop by other places first. Ruri asks him if he would come back to the village someday, and he tells her he would like to if it's allowed. Yuba tells him to come back whenever he wants and reminds him that he's part of the village. After returning from the capital, Ryo goes around to greet everyone in the village properly. Sayo notices the difference in how Ryo and Ruri interact, and Ruri explains that she asked him to drop the formalities since they live in the same house. Ryo goes hunting with Dola and Shin, and afterward, he helps with farming. He approaches Sayo to assist her with farming and expresses his hope that she'll remember everything he's taught them, wanting her to supervise the villagers in his absence. Surprised by his plan to leave, Sayo learns he hasn't told anyone yet, but intends to leave around the harvest festival. She asks if he'll visit often if he stays nearby, but he mentions he plans to travel across the country, so he's unsure about coming back regularly. Tears well up in Sayo's eyes, and she tries to hide it, claiming she has dirt in her eyes. Ryo uses spirit arts to create water for her to wash her face, and she continues with her work. By evening, Shin finds Sayo crying at home and asks her what's wrong. Suspecting it's because of Ryo, he tries to go after him, but she stops him, revealing that Ryo is leaving the village. Shin rushes to Ryo's house and pleads with him to stay. Sayo intervenes and takes him back home, apologizing to both Ryo and Yuba for the scene. Sayo keeps practicing her spirit arts, determined to improve day by day. During the harvest festival, Lady Yuba invites Guki and his family to join them for fun. Guki arrives at the village and challenges anyone confident in their skills to face him. Ryo prepares kamutan for everyone, and even Komomo looks forward to trying Ryo's dish. Rio thanks Kyoko for her assistance, and she says it's the least she could do after being invited to the festival. Seo pulls Rio aside, saying she wants to discuss something with him. She confesses her love, leaving him speechless. He apologizes, telling her he can't return her feelings. When she asks if it's because he's leaving, he admits that's partly true. She insists on going with him, stating she's trained hard for 6 months, so she wouldn't slow him down, and offers to do anything to change his mind. He reiterates that it's not about that, apologizes again, and tells her he can't reciprocate her feelings. With tears in her eyes, she asks him to let her stay by his side, even if he doesn't look at her. He apologizes once more and takes his leave, leaving her to cry. On his way out, he excuses himself to Shin, who had been listening in the bushes the whole time. At night, Rio thanks Yuba and Ruri for everything they've done as he prepares to leave. He tells them he has said his goodbyes to everyone in the village and that the journey ahead will be long. Yuba tells him to take care, and he reminds both of them to stay well. On his way out, he runs into Sayo. Earlier, while she was crying where Rio left her, Shin comes to comfort her, and Guki asks if she's in love with Rio. He questions her if she loves him enough to leave the village she was born and raised in, and she admits she is in love with Rio. With a smile, she tells Rio to take care of himself, and that she'll work hard and give it her all. He expresses his happiness that she came to see him off and thanks her. They say goodbye, and he continues on his way. Rio returns to the spirit village and is welcomed back by Ariel and the girls. Later that evening, he meets with the elders to fill them in on everything that happened. Sildora asks how long he plans to stay this time, and he replies that it will be for a few months. He informs Latifa that he's leaving again, but reassures her that he'll return more quickly this time. Ursula asks if he faced any problems during his travels, and he inquires if he can build a house to take with him in the space-time cache. Dominic agrees it's a good idea. Ursula suggests he leave the house to Dominic and spend some time with Latifa and the others in the meantime. After 2 years, Rio finally arrives home, and they have some fun with the now-grown girls. He compliments each of them one by one. Latifa suggests they all take a bath together, and the other girls scream in excitement. The next morning, Rio made a loud noise from his room, and the girls rushed in, curious about what was happening, only to find an unknown girl hugging Rio tightly while she slept. He tells them it's a misunderstanding. Sarah tells the other girls that it's a misunderstanding since Rio is just sleeping with a naked girl, and they've seen something they weren't meant to. Latifa asks him who she is, and he replies that he doesn't understand what's going on at all. The girl finally wakes up and tells them that she's a spirit. She informs Rio that she is the spirit who made a pact with him and calls him Haruto. He says she's the bonded spirit Lady Dryas mentioned and asks her how they formed a pact. She says she doesn't know. He asks if she was the one who showed him how to use spirit arts when he was little, and she replies that she doesn't know. He wonders why she suddenly appeared after sleeping within him until now, and she again says she doesn't know. Rio questions if this is what happens when a bonded spirit first appears. Sarah states that they don't know, as the spirits they bond with aren't in human form. He asks the bonded spirit her name, and she tells him she doesn't know it either. She says she wants a name, and he asks her why he should give her one. She explains that it's because she exists for him. Orphea points out that she has been calling Rio Haruto, so he tells her that he will explain later. Rio tries to correct her about his name, and she uses telepathy to say she knows everything about him. They continue to talk telepathically, and he asks if that means she knows everything about Amakawa Haruto. She confirms and asks if it would be better to call him Rio. He says she can use either name. Latifa interrupts, asking what's wrong. Back to regular conversation, Rio asks if she's okay with him giving her a name, and she agrees, so he asks for a little time. Sarah suggests they consult the elders and Lady Dryas for advice since Lady Dryas is also a person-shaped spirit. Rio asks the spirit if she will accompany him, and she agrees. As she stands up from the bed, a bright light shines, and she magically weaves her clothes from odd and mana. Impressed by her beauty, Rio names her Aishia. Sarah tells her that it means warm springtime or beautiful springtime in the ancient language of their village. Aishia says she likes the name because it has the spring element like Haru and Haruto. Rio introduces Aishia to the elders, saying it all happened suddenly. Ursula wonders why Aishia lost all her memories, and Lady Dryas appears. Dryas tells them she sensed a powerful spirit within the village's barrier. She introduces herself to Aishia, and Aishia reciprocates. Dryas mentions that Aishia is a spirit she doesn't recognize, and explains that person-shaped spirits usually keep their memories from before they became elevated. She asks Aishia if she remembers what kind of spirit she was, and Aishia replies that she's Haruto's bonded spirit. Sildora asks who Haruto is, and Rio tells him there's a situation regarding that. He explains that he's wanted by the authorities in the Strahl region, and refers to himself as Haruto there. Sildora says they should set that discussion aside for now. Dryas suggests it would be good to identify what kind of spirit Aishia is, so she asks Aishia what element she excels at. Aishia says she's skilled with spirit arts of every element, shocking the elders. Dryas and the elders have Rio and Aishia fight each other to confirm Aishia's claim, because Dryas has never heard of a person-shaped spirit that can handle all elements. She tells Rio that he needs to understand Aishia's power. The battle begins, and they match each other's speed, blocking attacks, which makes Rio wonder if Aishia has copied his techniques. The intensity of the battle increases as they continue to counter each other's strikes. Rio uses the same power he used to defeat the Black Wyvern, and Aishia matches it. Just before they can unleash their attacks, Dryas stops the match. Rio apologizes for getting too into it. Dryas warns that something bad might happen to the village if they keep going. They now believe Aishia can use all elements of spirit arts, and Dryas tells them that what they just witnessed is just a fraction of Aishia's potential, but she is still a dangerous spirit. She offers to share knowledge about spirits with Aishia. Dominic builds a house for Rio with a stone-lined bath. He tells Rio that as long as he uses spirit arts to lay the foundation, he can put it wherever he wants. After the house is done, Rio tells Dominic he plans to pay his respects to the elders later that night, since it's time for him to leave. He mentions he intends to depart in 2 days. The girls go to prepare dinner, and Sarah comments that his departure is sudden. He explains he decided on leaving when the house was ready. She expresses concern for Latifa and suggests Rio spend some time with her. Since Aishia woke up, Rio has been focused on his spirit arts training and hasn't talked to Latifa much. While in the bath, Latifa comes in and asks if she should wash his back. He tries to stop her, but she insists, so he reluctantly agrees. While washing his back, she reveals her name was Endo Suzune in Japan. He wonders why she's sharing this now, and she mentions that Aishia calls him Haruto, which is his name from before reincarnation. Latifa tells him about taking the bus to school and wishing for a big brother who took the same bus every day, but the bus got into an accident. He apologizes for not being a big brother and not spending enough time with her. She hugs him and asks him to promise to come back to the village this time. He reassures her that he'll return if she's waiting for him, mentioning he has something to do in the Strahl region. The next day, Ursula gives Rio a teleportation crystal set to the village, allowing him to return easily. Sildora gives him an earring that lets him change his hair color at will. Rio and Aishia head to Strahl, but he decides to see Celia first. Celia is about to marry Charles, yet she still remembers Rio and hopes he will come back someday. In the year 1000 of the Holy Era, spring, Rio arrives at Beltrant, blending into the crowd. He changes his hair to brown and asks a pastry shop seller why it's so crowded. She replies it's because of a noble's wedding parade, and many people have come from outside the royal capital. He asks which noble house, and she tells him it's from the Duke Arbor's house. They then head to the academy, and Aishia helps them sneak into the basement. Upon reaching Celia's office, they find it empty. Aishia suggests using illusions to ask the other researchers where she is. They find out Celia is at the royal palace, preparing for her wedding to Lord Charles of the House of Duke Arbor. Rio discovers that Celia is marrying Charles, and a researcher, under the influence of a spell, tells him it's a classic marriage of convenience. The kingdom of Beltram faced a major defeat against the Proxia Empire in the last conflict, and with the help of the House of Duke Arbor, managed to start peace negotiations. However, the royal family lost power and authority. When Duke Huguenot's faction was held accountable, they fled the royal capital. The House of Duke Arbor aligned with the House of Count Clare for more strength. Rio asks if Count Clare seeks a political marriage, but the researcher admits he doesn't have details on that. Outside, on the roof of the school building, Aishia asks Rio what his plans are. He tells her he wants to see Celia and speak with her before the wedding. Aishia offers to scout the castle in her spirit form, as the castle's defenses will be tighter than the academy's. He warns her that a spirit in that form is just a mass of energy, and that the castle may have wards to detect suspicious magic. She assures him she can spot barriers designed for that purpose, so he should let her handle it. The night before the wedding, Charles and Celia are dining with her father. Charles wants to make a big statement with the wedding to show the strength of the kingdom of Beltram. Celia's father expresses concern over the kingdom's chaotic state and asks if security will be perfect. Charles assures him that he has gathered the best forces in the kingdom, which puts Celia's father at ease. Celia thanks her father, and Charles tells her that instead of her worrying, it's their job to worry for her, as strange rumors have been surfacing from the royal court that she and some nobles are secretly in touch with Duke Huguenot. Celia's father insists those rumors are baseless, but Charles replies that trust in him has been shaken. Celia's father promises never to betray the kingdom, and Charles reassures him that his marriage to Celia will also help secure his position. He proposes her father take on a role as commander and director of the House of Duke Arbor, which feels threatening to Celia's father, making him regret not maneuvering better. He vows to do everything in his power to meet his responsibilities, and Charles toasts to the peace and prosperity of both houses. As Rio suspected, the defenses are tight. Aishia tells him she has found Celia, and Rio hurries to her location. Celia wishes she could see Rio again, and as she tries to burn the last letter he sent her, he walks in. After 4 years, she runs to hug him and expresses how much she's missed him. He replies he has missed her too, and she comments on how much taller he has grown. They compliment each other on their Chanjishi on his growth, and he on her beauty. She asks about his travels to the Yagumo region and wants to hear all about his adventures. She offers him tea, noting it's been a long time since she shared tea with anyone. Rio brings up her marriage. asking if it's something she wants. He apologizes for prying. She admits she has agreed to the wedding and asks if Charles is a bad match for him. He mentions that it likely ties back to his family's circumstances. Celia denies that, stating she's of age now. She describes Charles as chivalrous and kind to women. Despite his looks, Rio presses on, asking if he should marry her instead or take her away to live together. She tells him to forget that, laughing it off, and asks him to leave. He insists they haven't finished discussing it, but she says her caretakers will be arriving soon, and she still has preparations for an early morning. She expresses her happiness at seeing him before the ceremony, but insists he shouldn't come to the wedding the next day as it would be embarrassing. When Rio takes his leave, she starts to cry, thanking him for coming, but is determined not to let him get caught up in her situation. Rio tells Aisha that he couldn't figure out Celia's true feelings and he's unsure what to do. He says he wants to understand the motivation behind the wedding, and she agrees to help him. The next day, Reese meets Charles and congratulates him on the upcoming wedding. Reese has just arrived in the capital and seems to have a good rapport with Charles. They come from rival kingdoms, but they are officially at peace with the kingdom of Beltram. Reese decides to keep his visit low-key, as they shouldn't be seen together. While they chat, Reese feels a powerful spirit nearby, but it suddenly vanishes. Celia, fully dressed, tries to suppress her emotions, telling herself she's just a doll. She walks out, and Charles introduces her to his wives, encouraging her to befriend them. He tells his first wife, Tenesina, to take care of the others. Tenesina introduces herself to Celia, explaining that although a count's daughter would usually outrank them socially, Celia would be at the bottom as the seventh wife and should avoid any disrespectful behavior. Suddenly, they receive word that Princess Christina, the first princess of the realm, has arrived, and Celia insists they let her through immediately. Christina compliments Celia's beauty. They engage in light conversation, and Christina admits she's always admired Celia's freedom, but believes she now feels trapped like a bird in a cage. Christina vows to do everything she can to help Celia regain her former smile. Celia expresses her gratitude and mentions her hope to reunite with Princess Flora someday. Charles and Alfred are out for a walk when Charles shares that he's about to take command of the assembled forces. Alfred is the strongest in the kingdom, and his skills have earned him the nickname, the King's Sword. Alfred has no choice but to follow Charles's orders, as he has authority over the ceremony's security. The wedding ceremony gets underway, and Charles anticipates the moment they kiss to seal their vows. Rio appears in the crowd. Aisha uses her telepathy to reach out to Celia, saying that Rio asked her to communicate this way. Celia starts to cry when she sees Rio because he's the one person she doesn't want to see her like this. She asks Aisha to find Rio for her, but she can't spot him in the crowd. To her shock, an intruder disrupts the wedding, and it turns out to be Rio. Rio chases after Celia, taking down all the guards in his path. The different squad tries to hold him back and stop his progress, but he dodges all their attacks and keeps moving forward. After defeating them all, Rio strikes Charles in the stomach and takes Celia as a hostage. Duke Arbor and Count Claire are impatient and try to go after Rio, but they are stopped. Rio explains the situation to Celia while chaos surrounds them. He tells her to stay quiet for a moment, and she asks him what's happening. Rio speaks directly to her mind through telepathy, telling her to concentrate on her thoughts and her voice will reach him. He steps on Charles and threatens to crush his spine underfoot. Charles is confused about why the person standing on him is so powerful. Rio continues explaining to Celia and asks her for her will once more before she marries, questioning if Duke Arbor's house has half threatened her into the wedding. He tells her he'll end the wedding if she wants, and she accuses him of being domineering. He explains that she is precious to him, and he owes her so much, so he doesn't want to lose what matters to him, or he'll regret it for life. He asks her if the marriage will make her happy, and she tells him that putting her feelings first may cause trouble for others. He tells her not to give up, promising to make her dreams come true. She asks what he plans to do if she says she doesn't want to get married, and he replies that he'll take her and run away, and no one would question her father's involvement. With a tear in her eye, she tells Rio she wants him to take her away, and he immediately tells Charles he'll take his bride. Rio grabs Celia and flies off, deflecting all the guards' attacks, while Reese watches the entire situation unfold. From observing the fight, he realizes that Rio was the one who defeated the Black Wyvern earlier. Reese attacks Rio to test his strength, but Rio blocks the attack and grabs Celia to escape. Alfred takes command of the army, informing them that the aerial knights are in pursuit, and their forces will spread out in a net around the capital. He leaves security duties to his younger sister Vanessa, instructing her to coordinate with the captains of each unit. Charles blames Alfred for Celia's abduction, and Alfred asks if he has any idea who the insurgent might be. Charles tells him to pursue the insurgent and bring him back, and he promptly begins the chase. Although Reese is very interested in Rio and Aisha, he can't move away from his spot due to the security he has as an ambassador. Rio keeps running faster while being chased by the Griffin unit. He picks up speed, increasing the gap between them. He tells Celia they'll meet later once he passes the baton and mentions he has someone helping him, referring to Aisha. As soon as he lands, he hands her over to Aisha, just as they plan. He decides to create a distraction, buying them some time while they both make their escape from the royal capital together, planning to meet up later. Rio distracts the Griffin unit from Celia and Aisha, skillfully dodging all their attacks. When he lands on the ground, he faces the ground troops and has to take them out. Just then, Alfred shows up. He tells the other soldiers to step back so they don't get hurt. Alfred draws his sword against Rio's knives and starts attacking, forcing Rio to defend himself. Rio realizes there's a powerful magic spell on Alfred's sword, and they keep battling. Alfred questions why Rio won't fight him seriously, and says that his underestimation of Rio ends now. He powers up his sword and unleashes a massive attack at Rio. When the dust settles, Rio has vanished. Alfred knows he didn't hit him, and suspects Rio escaped into the back streets, so he orders his men to search the entire area. Aisha and Celia have successfully escaped the capital and meet up with Rio. Rio thanks Aisha for her help, and Celia expresses gratitude for being kidnapped. Rio mentions he has something to do, but before he leaves, Aisha senses danger. Suddenly, lightning strikes from the ground to the sky in multiple spots. Aisha tells Rio to help them while she protects Celia. Meanwhile, 3 young people find themselves in this world. One of the girls asks the guy named Masato where they are. He tells her not to ask him, while another girl suggests they figure out their location. She checks her phone but gets no signal, and suddenly, a giant appears behind her. Rio rushes in to save them, and to his surprise, one of them is Ayase Miharu.